Hello, everyone. My name is Evie Lupine, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to talk about what to do if you find yourself living through what I'm going to call a kinky dead bedroom. Maybe you've been doing BDSM for a while, and the spark that once lit up your dungeon is no longer there. Maybe you're struggling to see your partner as your dom or your sub. Or maybe vanilla life has simply crept too far into your kinky one and it's wreaking havoc. Whatever the case may be, I'm going to give you some tips for identifying what the underlying issue or issues are and how you can get back on track to the kinky relationship of your very dreams. I'm going to try to address this issue from both sides of the slash as well as from both partners' perspectives as much as possible. That means I'm going to be covering things both for doms and for tops as well as for subs and for bottoms, both the person who is losing enthusiasm as well as the person whose partner is losing enthusiasm. You might have noticed your own enjoyment waning, but your partner's might be stronger than ever, or it might be the case that your partner isn't approaching you for play as much anymore. And when they do play, their heart doesn't really seem to be in it, and you've noticed that. For whatever reason, your once regular play sessions have now dwindled to a mere trickle or maybe dried up entirely. This is where the term dead bedroom comes from. It's a vanilla phenomenon of relationships slowly losing their physical intimacy over time. While many vanilla folks use kink as a way to spice things up in a faltering bedroom, this doesn't mean that kink is immune to similar issues. If you find yourself struggling with this and you've noticed your drive for kinky activities waning, the first step is to try and figure out what's going on in yourself. I think it's tempting sometimes to just go, I don't know, I just don't feel like it anymore. I don't really want to do it right now. And that leaves a lot to be desired. What motivates people to do BDSM is multifaceted after all, and so are the reasons for why people lose interest. For example, we know that variety is a big part of many folks' libido. If that's you and you've been doing the same things over and over and over again, no wonder it would feel stale and boring to you. That's not going to be motivating for your libido. Some people are happy to eat the same thing for lunch every single day, right? They like that predictability and the routine of it. But for others, that would be like torture. They want to go out and try Indian or Thai or sushi. Variety is the spice of life, as they say. So the answer could be as simple as try mixing things up some more. But it's not always that easy, and I want to focus on those more complicated reasons for losing interest in BDSM first. Vanilla life creep is another really big factor. When something is new and exciting, it's really easy to keep that mentally quarantined from other parts of your life. It's so preoccupying that those mundane worries can't really find a place to take root in the very front of your brain. But when things become more settled and routine, you suddenly have more space available for those concerns to pile up and put their hooks in you. Stress from work, dealing with family stuff, or vanilla conflict in your relationship. This is actually related to a problem I've talked about before on my channel, Dom disillusionment syndrome, as coined by Race Bannon. When you start seeing your play partner as a real, full person, when you get a peek into their flaws and struggles, for some folks, that ruins the framework in their heads that motivated them to submit. A similar issue can also happen with a dominant towards their submissive. When they realize their partner isn't just an empty lump of clay who's available to be bent to their will 24/7, that can shatter the fantasy that fed their dominance. What do you do then? Do you just hang up the towel and move on? And I have a little bit of a funny example for you all. I have been watching the TV show Frasier again lately. It's kind of my comfort TV show. I'm not a fan of that term, but let's go ahead and call it that. So, spoiler alert for the later seasons, I guess, because I think Frasier actually has a really good example of how to deal with this. So, one of the big plot lines in that show is there's a character named Niles, and he has this passionate, unrequited love for Daphne Moon. She is completely oblivious to his interest for several seasons, all the while he worships the ground that she walks on. He builds up an elaborate fantasy version of her in his head where they are perfectly aligned and she is a goddess without flaw. This comes to a head when they are finally able to start dating. Even as they begin their courtship, Niles refuses to see the real Daphne, instead projecting his fantasy onto his now flesh and blood girlfriend. She then begins to compulsively overeat. This is a cover in the show for the actress's real-life pregnancy, and this is initially framed as simply her enjoying life to the fullest due to how happy she is in her relationship with Niles. However, it's not just that. It's later revealed after she sees a psychotherapist when she goes away for a while for the actress to go and have a kid, that she was subconsciously doing this to create distance between herself and Niles. She was afraid that she could never live up to his expectations for her after so many years of him pining for her, and he refused to see who she actually was. Everyone else, literally every single other character in the show, made a point to note that she had gained a lot of weight, and he just didn't want to see it. It wasn't a nice, pleasant, "Oh, honey, I love you no matter what your size is," which would have been a pretty positive message, especially in the early aughts where that kind of thing would have been unthinkable for most. But he couldn't even consciously process that she looked different than the simulacra he'd created. Eventually, he accepts it though, and he resolves to prove it by pointing out all of her flaws. He states that her cooking is terrible and that he doesn't believe that she has psychic visions, which is a pretty important part of her character. This, of course, provokes Daphne, who then lays into Niles about his shortcomings in turn. And during the resulting fight, they realize how much they love each other because of and despite their flaws. They can now finally see each other as whole, complex human beings. And boy, does that put a spark in their romance, if you know what I'm talking about. And, I'm not suggesting that you pick a fight with your partner about all of their flaws. That's probably a terrible idea. Life is not a sitcom, and that is way more likely to get a glass of water thrown in your face than a nice trip to the bedroom. But I do think there is a kernel of truth in this interaction. To truly love your partner, you have to radically accept who they are, flaws and all. Refusal to accept who your partner truly is often leads to heartbreak and confusion. It might be painful to realize your partner isn't your knight in shining armor or your fair maiden, but by seeing them as they really, truly are, you can let go of that struggle, which often leads to a calmer inner landscape once you do it. If you've ever found yourself thinking, "Why can't my partner just," or "Why aren't they more like," this is a step I would implore you to do if you've never tried to do it before. Now, I do want to be cautious here. This is not to say that we should accept things that we cannot tolerate, things that violate our values and our boundaries. If you have radically different opinions on things that matter to you, be that politics or ethics or anything else, you might want to reevaluate if this relationship is right for you on the level that it currently exists. The first year to 3 years of a relationship is what's called the limerance period, where we are infatuated with the object of our desire. This causes us to put on blinders, ignoring flaws, ignoring red flags, and ignoring differences in values. Eventually, though, that period ends, and when it does, the reality we wake up to isn't always pleasant. This is typically where relationships, if they're not meant to last, will end. But I don't want to be all doom and gloom just yet. I'm not going to tell you the relationship is going to fail because you've only been dating for 6 months. We have a lot more to talk about. I just want you all to keep in mind that emerging from limerence into reality could be a huge factor in your kinky bad bedroom because it applies to kink as much as it does to vanilla relationships. Like, I've looked at studies, there's not very many, but kink relationships tend to last for about a year or two on average. Something else that can throw us out of limerence and into a lackluster kink dynamic is emotional conflict with your partner. Sometimes this is one explosive conflict, like fighting during what was supposed to be a romantic getaway weekend. Other times, and I would argue more commonly, it's a slow drip, 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 drip of resentment building up over time. Perhaps your partner hasn't been the best at respecting your limits or boundaries. They might need to constantly be reminded what they are, which can, of course, be exhausting. Or every new boundary you try to set might be met with conflict. That's silly. Prove to me why you don't want to wear a corset when we play anymore. Why is it such a big deal? Also, that's very exhausting to go through too. Maybe they've done a few little oopsies during scenes. Maybe not full-on consent issues, not quite enough for you to say red, but enough to make you think, do they actually care about me? Are they even paying attention? Do I matter, or am I just a vessel for them to express their kink on? By the 5th time your partner forgets your aftercare stuffy at home after being specifically asked to bring it, it's natural to have some questions. Now, side note here, if your partner is of the narrow spicy variety, you do need to have some leeway here. I think it's fair to give that. It's easy to assume malice when our partner is forgetting something over and over and over again that's really important to us. But it might not be on purpose. They might not be being really selfish. It could just be their brains are not compatible with the way that we've been trying to deliver information, and we need to brainstorm together to figure out a way to make that work and actually help it stick. So leeway, very important here. Regardless, though, this damage in trust in a relationship is the number one killer of the bedroom as well as the dungeon. If you can't trust your partner to remember you have a latex allergy, why the heck would you trust them to whip you or tie you up? I certainly wouldn't. And this too can come from that drip, drip of minor issues building up over time. Maybe your partner didn't take feedback after a scene super well that one time. Maybe they argued with you about how actually it was your fault that their swing missed and you ended up having bruised ribs. Never mind the fact that you were actually chained to a table at the time, but they really didn't want it to be their fault. Not being able to take accountability is a major, major turnoff, but I think these physical acts that lead to distrust are pretty obvious. What I think is harder to detect is factors that lead to emotional distrust in a relationship, which can be just as, if not more, damaging. This includes something called chronic invalidation, which is when a partner habitually refutes or denies the other partner's emotional experiences. It doesn't exactly put someone, well, most people, emotional masochists notwithstanding, in the mood if they've been told over and over and over again that their feelings don't matter. If you've heard stuff before, like, you shouldn't feel that way, or I didn't try to hurt you, what's the big deal? Why are you freaking out about this? Or you're overreacting, or you're being too sensitive, you're a baby, get over it. Oh my God, that was so long ago. You've been the subject of emotional invalidation. Almost all of us have been at one point in time or another. Another form of emotional corrosion to keep an eye out for is big feelings from one area of your shared life leaking into others. For example, if you're into BDSM and also polyamorous and your submissive partner has a new vanilla romantic partner besides you for the first time ever, you might feel pretty jealous. It's okay to say that. It's a safe place here. You might think this has nothing to do with your kink dynamic, but your jealousy and fear of replacement can cause you to withdraw from your partner and from your DS. It's a way to try and gain control again in your relationship. A way of rejecting someone before they fully reject you. Fine, you think you can do better than me. I'll show you. And that is going to be pretty dang destructive and can make things way worse. This can also happen with other emotions besides jealousy. Let's say, for example, you've recently lost your job or you've had a bad performance review from work. This can really hamper your ability to get fully into Dom mode because you might feel like you lost your mojo. What sub would want to submit to you if you can't even do your job well, right? You might be thinking something along those lines. And so, because you're thinking that, you then might end up creating the very circumstances that prove your point by proactively rejecting your partner, pushing them away, and convincing yourself they didn't even really want you in the first place. And that's really sad. Like, do not create your own prophecies this way. It's never going to work out, and you deserve to be happy and secure in a relationship. So, anyways, that is a lot of reasons for why you can end up with a kinky dead bedroom, and I am sure there are way more reasons that I am not listing here. But what do you do when you have this information? Well, no prizes for guessing this one. You have to talk to your partner about it. Shock, horror, I know, and this can be difficult. So it's worth preparing what you want to say in advance rather than letting it out during an argument. It wouldn't be very effective to say, for example, "You're the worst dom or sub ever. You're so mean. I hate you." Unless you're a brat talking to your dom and you're trying to ask for a spanking, and that's like a way that you normally do that. But for communicating real life adult problems, we have to act in a way that is measured and mature. For example, you might want to say something more like, "Hey, I think we've both noticed that we haven't been doing as many scenes lately. I know that I've said it's because I'm tired and I'm really stressed out from work, but I think it might go deeper than that. I actually took some time to reflect about this, and I think that fight we had after a scene a couple of months ago is actually still bothering me. It really hurt me that I felt like I couldn't say something went wrong without it being an argument about how it wasn't really a big deal and how I shouldn't be complaining. I haven't wanted to really do scenes because I'm worried that something will happen again and I won't feel safe enough to be able to talk about it with you. So I've thought about this and I think I might have something that'll help me feel better. I want to try writing down post-scene reports for a while and see how that goes. This way I can take my time to reflect and gather my thoughts, and you can read what I have to say on your own without it maybe feeling as much like an attack. How does that sound to you? I would be so excited to play again if we could come up with a plan for how to deal with this proactively in the future. And yeah, all of that is a mouthful, but it's worth exploring what you need in detail. Be clear, be calm, be concise, while giving your partner space to share their needs and their experiences as well. However, this is not a contest. This should not be about who hurt who the most or a reading of all the grievances or anything like that. So avoid the temptation to turn this into a, "well, but you" kind of argument. You can address those issues one at a time, and you can each give them their own space, because if you have a lot of built up resentment, each one of those issues does deserve their own airtime. So make sure you talk about that too. "Hey, I hear you, I see you. Let's talk about this another time. Let's focus on this thing right now." But maybe it's not you who has the issue with desire. Maybe your partner has been avoiding scenes but won't give you a clear answer as to why. The whole, I don't know, I just don't really feel like it, I guess, kind of thing I talked about earlier. In which case, reflect on the reasons I listed earlier and see if they might apply to your relationship. This process might mean admitting that you did something to hurt your partner, and that sucks. We don't generally want to hurt our partners non-consensually, but accepting that this happened is necessary to be able to move forward. You might want to say something like, "Hey, do you have time to talk about something? I know it might be uncomfortable, but I want to discuss how often we've been doing scenes." "Oh, you have a moment? Okay, great. So I just want to say, first of all, I have really enjoyed getting to be able to play with you, but I've kind of been getting the sense that maybe you don't feel the same way. Can you tell me what's been going on for you? I know before when we've talked, you've basically said that you just didn't really feel like doing it, and I totally understand that. However, I'm wondering if there maybe might be something else there that you're scared to share. I know a few weeks ago when we last played, I made a mistake and I called you a name that was a hard limit for you. I feel completely terrible about doing that. I'm really, really sorry I did that. I messed up, and you have every right to be hurt by that. Is there something I can do to make up for that? I know it won't make the pain of what I said go away, but I do have a plan I've been thinking of to maybe make sure it won't happen again in the future. I think I'd like to discuss our boundaries and limits again and put them down in writing this time. I want to keep a copy of what those boundaries and limits are in our play bag, and then I can review them before every scene, and we can keep doing that until you're confident that we have them committed to memory. I can also maybe keep them on a list on my phone, or maybe pin them to our chat in our text messages, whatever you want. I also want to put any degradation scenes on hold until you feel safe with that again, if ever. I totally understand if you never want to go anywhere near that with me. But how does all of this sound to you? Am I missing anything? Just, I'm trying to get the ball rolling here, but I want to do whatever you're comfortable with, okay? Just let me know what you're thinking. While these conversations are a necessary starting point, there are a few key ingredients that really make this work long term. How do you get the spark back when trust has been damaged or there's a lack of emotional connection? Simple, by opening up with emotional vulnerability yourself first. Maybe that means sharing fantasies you've had again if you haven't talked about that for a while. Or maybe it means getting real about how much you've enjoyed your past experiences together. Or maybe you talk about mistakes that you've made and how that made you feel. If you've been a brick wall in your relationship before and not really opened up about this yet, this can do a lot for your relationship. And just keep doing it. Repeat it over and over and over again. We trust those who trust us first. Give your partner the signal that you feel safe to share, and they might follow your lead. Of course, always respect boundaries, and everyone's going to want to talk about everything, and they're not always going to have space for every conversation you want to have, so keep that in mind too. But maybe your kinky dead bedroom isn't caused by complicated emotional baggage. Maybe it really is as simple as a lack of variety, or a busy schedule, or feeling tired after work. In which case, the answer is make time to do kink. Well, actually, make time to be mindfully with each other. I think saying specifically, we will do kink on March 25th, does work for some folks and some relationships, but I think that if you've been out of the dungeon for a while, let's say, it's worth it to take things slowly and to not have any pressure on a certain outcome. Maybe what you really need is some work-free, screen-free time to physically reconnect, going back to the basics, giving each other massages, or having a conversation where one of you kneels on the floor in a cute outfit. It can be really bare bones. I think if you make doing a specific scene the goal, that can create fear and nervousness, which can get in the way of the experience actually being positive. So please, again, do not create unnecessary pressure on yourself or your partner. If what you need is variety, boy howdy, do I have some suggestions for you. Not only do I have playlists with dozens and dozens of different kink activities explained in them, there's also so many other educators and videos and checklists and tutorials online and more things you can use for inspiration. All it really takes is a minute of bravery to say, hey, honey, how do you feel about trying fill in the blank here? And I'm confident you've got that bravery in you to be able to do that. So maybe try it if you've been feeling a little bit bored and you have some ideas of where you want to take things next. And what do you do if you do have more emotional issues impacting your relationship? I think this requires more of a three-pronged approach. So one is genuinely apologize for any harm done. Don't excuse behavior, don't minimize it. Recognize the gravity of what you did and accept it and give a genuine, heartfelt apology in return. 2, make a plan to avoid such issues coming up again in the future. And 3, have accountability for sticking to whatever that plan is. What is worse than not making a plan at all is to say you'll do something and then not do it. Have weekly check-ins, keep a calendar, write things down, do whatever you have to do to make sure you stay on the right track. If you violate trust while trying to repair trust, it's going to be even more of an uphill battle. And if something isn't working, if it's not fixing the issue or it's too hard to keep track of, try something else. Be flexible. Stay committed to maintaining things being better while also being willing to adjust things along the way to be able to reach that goal. Realize when something is going to be too big for you to fix on your own as well. You can't dom your partner out of depression, and you can't serve your partner so well that their anxiety goes away. Group therapy, skills groups, and trainee therapists can give you access to cheaper therapy, which I know is a big deal, especially if you're an American. And if that's not something you already are doing, you should really look into it if you need to. Fix what you can fix, accept what you can't, and trust professionals if needed. Try not to stay bogged down in trying to get back to how things used to be. I have seen this mess a lot of people up, constantly chasing what used to be in their relationship and always looking behind them and not forward. You can never repeat the past. Accept that the past gave you wonderful memories, but times and people change. Our bodies and lives change. It's better to move with those changes versus trying to fight against them and swim upstream. What you can do is work for a better tomorrow with what works for you right now as who you are right now, rather than trying to make yourself back into the person you used to be or trying to make your partner the person they used to be. Remember, always forward, never back. You gotta keep going ahead. And living in the past, being in denial about the fact that you can't ever really fully be like how you were 10 years ago is going to make it very difficult to create genuine progress in your relationship. But with that being said, that is about all of the advice I have for you all today. I would love to know your thoughts about this one in a comment down below. Have you ever had to deal with a kinky dead bedroom or dead dungeon, as maybe it so happens to be? I would love to know y'all's experience again in a comment down below. If you did enjoy this already, please do subscribe because I make videos twice a week about all sorts of different kink and BDSM related topics. And finally, if you want to support what I do, the best way you can do that is with Patreon. A link to that will be down below. If you do already support over there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.